Hi folks, with Tacitus Today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. Please listen to this presentation as you would a radio broadcast. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the claims that the propagandists are making that in Australia the residential real estate property prices will boom by at least 10% this year. Now, some are even saying 15 or even 20% price increase in just this year is not out of the question. Now, they're clearly talking it up, and the adverts that you're seeing online and elsewhere are bordering on hysterical, and they're just loaded propaganda. How they're allowed to be put up, I don't know. But, people that are being touted as supposed experts are just talking heads who don't know squat about anything. Nonetheless, let's have a look at this issue of increasing real estate prices. Now, recently, there's been a lot of talk about, there was a federal election in Australia recently, so there's a lot of talk about making houses more affordable for just ordinary working people. And there were various sort of remedies and prescriptions put forward. Well, what we'll do is we'll just build more. We'll just concrete it over. We'll concrete over any piece of green space we can find, and throw up tower block apartments on it, and that'll fix the problem. Others suggested that mass migration should be restrained, but they were poo-pooed and dismissed as all being Nazis and Hitlers and so on. There was minor talk about stopping overseas buying, and there have been some sort of very minimal type action there, but particularly politicians buying, real estate and then selling at vastly inflated prices the real estate they've bought to cashed up Chinese buyers. That's making a lot of politicians very rich, or very well off, if not rich, in Australia, and so they're reluctant to clamp down on overseas buying. But nonetheless, let's have a look at that. There have been some steps to clamp down on overseas buying, but then these overseas buyers just use local nominees to do the buying for them, and in that way they can bypass the the limitations or the restrictions. So let's look at this just generally. There's a lady. She's inherited a house, and she's not far away, and we know her. And she's in the sort of the $1 million plus price tag here. Now she at a place, by the way, that 50 years ago you could have bought that same place for like between $10,000 and $15,000, and today it's over $1 million. Give you an idea of the price inflation on residential real estate. But she's got it up for sale, and she's quite sort of open about it. The only people who are talking the sort of prices that are Indians and Chinese. The people, there's no local people who have the money to do the buying of the real estate. Now, I notice this wherever I go. If ever I look in the local area, and if I happen to drive past, or I do a lot of bike riding as well, I go past what looks like an inspection time for real estates for sale. I'll typically stop and have a little look, and the amount of times that there is not a single white person, a single person talking English in doing the house inspection, and a lot of the Chinese people and Indians too that are doing the inspections are either representing a buying group or a buying a syndicate, or they're representing an overseas buyer, and they're just the buying agents. And there's a gazillion Chinese buying agents running around all over Australia, and so I don't see a lot. They're not mums and dads or local people buying a house that they're going to bring up their kids in. That sort of stuff doesn't exist. And until we come back to that view of residential real estate as being a place where you start a family and until we come back to that mindset, I don't think residential real estate will ever be affordable again for the average person, and birth rates will never climb to even replacement rate until that is addressed. that key issue must be addressed before we can move forward on these other fronts. But anyway, there are, the key, the Black Rocks and, those sort of people and the politicians and all the flunkies that are in their pocket are getting, doing very, very nicely out of this. There's probably, I would argue there's not a politician in Australia that has the majority of their income coming from their salary, their parliamentary or political salary. The majority of their income now comes from real estate speculation, which means they're effectively wedded to the big banks and the big property syndicates and that sort of stuff. Anyway, coming back to the thing that I can't find a single white person that's buying anything real estate wise in the local area. You might find the odd one or two retired, but there was some people down the road that they had a place in the city area. He retired from whatever it was he was doing, and so they decided to move out of the into the outer suburbs, and same decision we made really, to be near forests and the beach and that sort of stuff. So, but other than that, all the buying is Chinese and Indians. That's it. No one else is buying real estate in the area. Now, just a few days ago, just to sort of highlight this, a few days ago, I ended up going to a shopping centre. I don't normally go to this thing I wanted in the shop and needed urgently. They didn't have it in stock. Said, but if you go to the shopping centre over there, they've got it. Okay. So I did, and that's why I ended up there. And there was this 30-seater bus came along, full of Chinese people, and only Chinese people in it. And now I speak passable Mandarin, so I can not only hear what they're saying or a lot of it. If they talk too quickly, I don't get it all. And also pick their accent. That's a Beijing accent, and this, and so I can sort of pick that. So anyway, I saw this bus turn up, and they all had like folders and portfolios and all sorts of things in their hands, and palm top type computers and everything, so or extra widescreen iPhone type looking things. So when I spotted that, I realized, and as I got closer, I could hear what they were talking about, and they were talking about going to inspect properties. So once I heard that, they're talking Mandarin, by the way. So I once I heard that, I went over and tried to sidle up and get close, without looking obvious. And sure enough, they were looking through their portfolios, which had all residential, looking over a shoulder, residential real estate. They were talking about it. Now, they were an organised, planned, 30-strong buying syndicate. And some were buying agents. Some were representing, Chinese banks and this sort of thing. But that was a very organised arrangement. And I've seen Indian buying groups the same. So here these people coming, they're stripping the fucking city of its residential real estate, while our politicians, supposedly representing us, do nothing. They do sweet fuck all to stop this. And now I can't go to China or India and do that, but these people can come here and do it. And again, just vacuum up every piece of real estate in fucking sight and pay. Now remember, they're just money laundering. They're not thinking about, I've got my 9-to-5 job. Can I make the payments? And, do I have to take little Johnny out of school to make the payments, or can we afford to put food on the table with this big mortgage or something? They're not thinking like that. They're just money laundering, mass scale money laundering. So they don't have any of those considerations to worry about. They're just looking for real estate as a conduit and a vehicle to launder fucking money. That's all they're doing. And they got a lot of money to fucking launder. And so they just use the real estate for that as a device to do that. Or in the case of spending or paying a vastly over the top price to buy political favors from politicians and so on. Now, given that, that means there'll never be a surplus of real estate for sale. And now, whatever market forces may exist in real estate, and it's not like the old days, previous to mass migration, where market forces were driven by the local population and the local population's ability to afford to take on a mortgage or pay rent or whatever. But it was local people. What could they afford? Now, when you've got mass migration and the level of mass migration, is quadruple what the amount of home building or house building or apartment building is, then you're going to have this artificial demand that doesn't represent the local economy. It represents an outside economy, not only the mass migration, but the ability of offshore buying syndicates, such as these Chinese people. I mean, 30 of them in one fucking bus, for Christ's sakes. And this is how the Chinese operate. This is how they do. When the COVID thing first came on, and there was a lot of concern about would there be enough toilet paper, for example, the Chinese operating very tribally, very racially, only their diaspora mattered. They would arrive in these, again, the same thing, 30, 40-seater buses. They'd arrive in and they'd all trip out. They'd go into the grocery store or the supermarket or whatever, and they buy up every bit of toilet paper, and they just absolutely, there'd be nothing left on the shelf. They were like locusts. They just strip it bare and off they'd go. Now, in response, some of the supermarkets and grocery stores, they say, okay, it was a limit of 2 packets per customer, that sort of thing. Didn't matter. These people would just have 2 bus loads, and they'd have 60, 70, 80 of them would come along, all buy 2 each, and that would strip the shelves bare. So very, very organised and very concentrated and focused on their objective, and their real estate buying groups are the same. They'll just buy. Now, I've seen this in say on Saturday with a lot of housing auctions go on, and in the housing auction sort of space, you see the Chinese buying agent or the group or the whatever just go from auction to auction and just buy everything. I mean, they don't give a flying fuck what they pay. Again, they're not thinking, how with my 9-to-5 job can I afford to? It's not even on their radar. They're just laundering slush fund money and shitloads of it, and so they don't care what they pay. So if the market price is 500,000 and they have to pay 900,000, they don't care. It's not a value proposition for them. It's just a money laundering exercise. So they can turn 900,000 of illegal money into 900,000 of legitimate money just by laundering it through the real estate thing. But what it means is market forces are not driving real estate. It's nothing to do with market forces at all. Nothing to do with value or intrinsic value or worth or the value of accommodation as a place where people live. Nothing to do with that. And again, just highlighted seeing these Chinese there. So I followed them around for a bit, just listening to them and watching them. I was mingling with the crowd. They didn't know that. And peering over the shoulders and so on. And they're quite shocked when they find that Anglos that can speak Mandarin, they look at you with a state of bewilderment almost on their faces. But anyway, this is the thing. So when we look at talk that the real estate prices, this is residential real estate, are going to increase by 10% or up to 20% with some of the more hysterical pundits and observers, then it's not coming from local people buying. Pretty much everything that's being bought is being bought by overseas money, offshore money. Whether they do this directly or through local nominees, it doesn't matter. But the local nominees thing, again, isn't being clamped down on. That's why you get casual, illiterate Chinese cleaners that have multi-gazillion dollar real estate portfolios. They're just nominees for the rich boys back home. You've been with Tassos today at your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.